The number one piece of advice I found to get us through this newlywed stage is we have to get really good at talking about hard stuff. Because if you don't, you're going to end up picking up a pattern of either fighting or flighting and avoiding and disconnecting. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Dr. Matt here. And man, I think we got a great topic for you today. After 25 years of giving marriage advice and having literally thousands of people come up to me at different places to ask me advice, what I've done is put together what I feel is the best advice for the different stages of marriage that we all go through, right? As we go through these different stages, we're going to actually focus on 5 different stages from that, young, yearning, awesome love fest to the golden years. And with each one of these stages, I'm going to actually try to show you what I have found to be kind of the number one trip up, the number one problem that couples face in those stages, and then my number one favorite piece of advice to help you get through that stage or to get through that problem and to conquer it. Stage by stage, we'll go through it, peel them apart. So you be thinking in your relationship, which of these stages are you in? And by the way, each piece of advice as we go through the stages are all awesome to still incorporate into the stage you're in. But one of the things I want you to look at and think about, just as you're working on your own relationship, is sometimes when you're having a relationship issue, I want you to know it may not actually just be a relationship issue. It may not need to devastate you and throw you into this, horrible sense that everything's falling around you. It might just be a stage issue. So some of our biggest relationship issues, if we don't understand that our marriage is going to go through stages, then we might run into a problem where we don't realize that our issue that we're dealing with is a stage issue. It's where we are in life, not just a relationship or a marriage issue. Does that make sense? And I found that just honestly makes it a little easier, I think, for all of us to understand how we're going to get that till death do us part relationship to work, right? You make these promises, you make these covenants when you're early on in a really high stage of chemistry. And we're supposed to, I guess, just take what we built there and make it work. And it's supposed to last 70 years. Is that the belief that we have? Because I think some of us do. And that actually creates a pretty, I think, unreasonable view of what a relationship is and what you're going to do to actually get the most out of that relationship. So we're going to kind of break down some of that myth that it's not just a person and it's not just one ride and it's not even just a marathon, quite honestly. It's hundreds of marathons that we're going to run to create this healthy long-term relationship. Another metaphor I kind of use a lot or think about a lot is that we need to not only just build the spaceship or build the car, we need to be really good at rebuilding the car and adding on to the relationship and the car so that it can make it through the test of time, or add on and adapt the spaceship so that we can keep continuously getting from stage to stage to stage. It's really hard, if you think about it, to plan for the issues you're going to run into as a couple in 30 years with a family, with the complexity of work and moving and changes and family problems and family dynamics and other issues that are going to come up. How could you feasibly prepare for that stage when you're just young and learning and in love? So you can't. And so instead of thinking of a relationship as just this static thing that did we pick the right person? Are we the right person? It's also about, are we understanding the different stages and figuring out how to work through those stages? So let's get into that very first stage that we talk about. Again, it's the dating stage. It's the yearning stage. It's signified by where we have really high chemistry, right? Oh my gosh, we love each other so much. There's nothing our partner will ever do that will ever make us not love them. And do you remember everything they do in that yearning, exciting stage? Everything they do is so darn cute It's just so cute. It's adorable, right? And that is the dilemma of that stage. The number one problem is that our clarity is kind of diminished as our chemistry starts to overwhelm. When you have really high chemistry, that physical response to each other, where all your hormones are higher, your estrogen's higher, your testosterone's higher, your dopamine's just flowing through your body, serotonin's there, all of this really good stuff is going on. But what it tends to do is it decreases the clarity you have. Just simply meaning you're not as clear about who the person is because you see them through rose-colored glasses, right? For example, a lot of the clients I see, they're kids that are getting married, they're in their early 20s, they're in love, they've been in love, they've dated for 2 years or whatever, and their parents send them to me to give them some pre-marriage advice, some pre-marriage coaching or counseling. And when they come in, a lot of them come in not really having any questions, not really ever thinking that there's going to be a problem because they haven't seen very many problems. And it doesn't mean that's a bad stage. That's just actually exactly what you would expect from that yearning, dating stage of love. The problem, though, is that we're not always clear, right? There are signs, for example, that our partner might not want to, finish the degree at college that he says he wants to. The signs may be there that your partner might have a hard time letting go of some of her girlfriends and having an interdependent relationship with you because she wants to always have her friends around. The signs might be there in that stage. We just don't see them. So one of the things that I suggest, and this is the overarching piece of advice for this young stage, this yearning stage of high chemistry, lower clarity, is a simple piece of advice that I just say, 4 seasons and hundreds of questions. That's the advice. 4 seasons and hundreds of questions. And which is seriously interesting advice because a lot of people nowadays, today's day and age, are not marrying quickly. They're not committing as fast. So they actually are with each other a lot longer than when I originally used to talk about this. 4 seasons simply means I want you to see your partner in every stage of the year. I want to see what their life is like in the summer when they're free and they have more vacation time. I want to see what it's like in fall when they're back to school or when they have to go back to work after a summer vacation. I want to see what they're like in the wintertime and how you manage and negotiate all of the holidays with your partner. And I'd love you to see each one of those scenarios as often as you can. I'd love you to go have multiple holidays and multiple Christmases with your partner's family to see how the family itself is integrated. And where does your partner fit in to their family dynamic? Are they the leader, the strength of the family? Are they the weak one that everybody laughs at? Are they the one that never gets assigned a food assignment because the guy's incompetent and he can only bring chips? What phase does your partner fit into? And in this young dating stage, if we go for wide and deep in our understanding of each other, ultimately that's the goal of the 4 seasons approach. And the 4 seasons approach is not just to have a year, it's to have a lot of depth in each season because each season brings a lot of really important type of events. What's it like going to your partner's Christmas party with their company? And how do they handle it? How do they handle the opportunity to go take an extended vacation, 2 weeks? And how do they handle negotiating that with their company? I want you to see what's going on with your partner and take really good notes about how they handle the stress, how they handle the moodiness of the seasons. Do you see any seasonal affective disorder? Do they get a little more sad, a little more down, a little bit more mopey emotionally during the winter season? What are you learning about their family and their family's psychology and their family's history as you go through this? That's what I want us to be exploring in this stage. Now, another thing I want you to be doing for this time, this extended period of time, while you're kind of working through all of the issues, is I want you to go deeper into the relationship by having more questions, more opportunities to talk. Do you remember when you first fell in love, you could stay up for hours talking? You just loved hearing each other, right? And eventually, once you kind of get used to each other and the chemistry fades a little bit, you're not always talking as much. Sometimes you're making out. Sometimes you're kissing on each other. Sometimes you're just watching a show. Sometimes you're just going on your walks and doing your activities. I want you to get really good in this first stage of actually talking and bringing up issues and questions that help to kind of rattle each other a little bit. And there are places out there, if all you did was go Google questions to ask the person I'm dating, questions to ask to get deeper connection in our relationships. There's amazing research from Dr. Arthur Aaron that talks about the fact that if we spend a lot of time doing eye-to-eye contact and talking about deeper issues that make us vulnerable, those issues tend to actually open us up and actually increase our intimacy in our relationship. There are literally thousands of questions you could be asking, but I don't want you to just ask, like, what's your favorite color? That's cute. That's great. It's good to know. But another question you can ask that might be even more effective than what's your favorite color is, tell me where you've been most embarrassed. Tell me some of the most embarrassing life experiences you've ever had. Now notice, that's not something we're excited to share. That's something we maybe keep from each other. And instead of keeping it from each other, what I'd love you to do is find a way to actually be vulnerable enough to go there. Talk about your biggest fears. Talk about your biggest insecurities. Talk about your biggest letdowns. If you could have one person over to dinner and have an incredible weekend with that one person from any time in history, who would that person be and why? Powerful questions, right? Talk about your kids that you're going to have someday. Talk about what kind of dad they want to be. What kind of mom do you want to be? What are your biggest fears about having children? Makes sense? The deeper we go with the questions, and if we can incorporate that into our stage of dating so that we literally aren't just passing time with each other watching a show, but we are going deep with each other, there is a lot of information we can learn about each other, which will increase our clarity in who we're marrying, right? That way, it's not just chemistry that got us married. It's the clarity of being able to understand who we're actually marrying and why they're so important to us. So that's stage one, overcoming that problem of being love blind, quite literally, because chemistry is so high and clarity is low. The way we overcome it, simply put, is 4 seasons. We go deep into the experiences of their lives over seasons and time, and we ask hundreds and hundreds of deeper questions, eye to eye, to create more of a connection and more clarity about who we're actually with. Okay, now let's move into the second stage. The second stage, what would be more fun to talk about than the newlyweds? Those of you that are actually newlywed, newly married, in this promise together, and deeply connected. Obviously, you've made a covenant or a promise to each other. You're now in your first couple years of your relationship. You generally 1 to 3 years when you're still in that really fun, starting your household kind of stage. That newlywed number one problem that I see, and it's been historic, and there's a lot of really awesome research on it, is that problem or the mindset of moving from me to we. There is a really strong battle that takes place for all of us when we have to incorporate into a new cooperative system, right? We have forever spent our life being in a family, but we were very much about us, right? We were able to go do what we wanted to do. We were able to go be with our friends. Everything was about our decisions for how everything fits me. And a lot of us get that really deeply ingrained. And in fact, sometimes the longer you are single, the more ingrained in me you are, right? You get more stuck in a me. And I'm not even saying it's just selfish. What I'm saying is it's all you know. It's all you've had to know. Do you want to go do that activity? Is that good for me? If it's not, I'm not going to go do that activity. You haven't necessarily had to bend a lot if you're not in a lot of relationships that force you to bend, right? So in order to move from that independent stage to an interdependent stage, there's some progress we need to make. And a lot of us have just never gone there. And I think we just assume we will. And we will because we also had all that chemistry from the dating stage, that yearning stage. But now as we're kind of entering into the real highly committed, now we're in a promise together. Let's get started. Let's get moving. Some of us really struggle with it and we don't know quite what to do, because you can stay the single guy out with your buddies and you can still have a girlfriend. But the minute you're married, you might start altering some of your things. Maybe you're not going to go to the bars anymore. Maybe there's certain behaviors you're not going to go do. Maybe there's certain things you don't necessarily want to do because, you've been working all day. You want to get home to your wife and you might be on the verge of starting a family sometime soon, right? So things change. And it's an awkward stage for a friend to have a married friend. And then the marrieds all go do stuff with other married couples, but the singles sometimes don't necessarily fit in. So it's a really interesting transition point. And if you have a hard time moving from me to we, it's problematic. I have a lot of clients that come in and they are so upset that the partner will not let his friends go. He doesn't need to play 2 hours of video games 2 times a week. He doesn't need to. So they come in and we're fighting about so now you're going to control me and I can't play video games? It's really not about video games. What it's about is one person wants to be together and the other person wants more freedom. And a lot of times you don't know how bad you want the freedom until you can't have any, right? And so one of the things we're going to want to actually get really good at, and this ideally would have been great to know earlier on, but because a lot of us are blinded by love, we don't know it. The number one piece of advice I found to get us through this newlywed stage is we have to get really good at talking about hard stuff. The newlywed stage is a really good place to look at each other, to connect with each other, and to go get really skilled at handling conflict. Because if you don't learn to handle the conflict at the newlywed stage when it starts to rear its head, then guess what? You're going to end up picking up a pattern of either fighting, which drives the other person to their friends more and doesn't make us become as cooperative, or flighting and avoiding and disconnecting and not communicating through it. So this stage is all about figuring out how we can talk through some serious questions like, what does free time look like for you? How much free time do you need? How much friend time do you need? How much together time do you need? When your partner says, I feel like you don't love me when you always go with your friends, you've got to not just react to that. And I wouldn't assume it's about the friends. I really wouldn't. What I would assume it's about is there's a deeper issue where your partner wants and had a perception and a belief that we would be more together more and have more time as a couple and a partnership, right? So if that's their expectation, then we've got to learn to start understanding each other's expectations. It doesn't mean we agree with everybody's expectation. We need to clarify what our expectations are. I never thought I'd have to give up my friends. And what you'll find out as you get into these conversations, your partner's not probably telling you to give up your friends. They're just probably saying, I want more time with you. And sometimes it's not friends. Many of the clients that I work with have a hard time giving up their parents, giving up their family, giving up. Why do we have to go to your family's house for every Sunday dinner? Why can't we go to my family's house? Why can't we go back and forth? Why can't we just go once a month to your family's house? instead of every week to your family's house? Why do you keep calling your mom every day? You're supposed to let go of your parents and cleave unto me, right? So these are the arguments that come up from the me to we transition. And again, it's fairly universal, but it's really about how much time we need alone and how much time we need together. So the advice of getting good at talking about the hard stuff, it's some of the hardest things that I think people need to learn. And we need to learn it. Now notice, I'm asking you to learn it in the newlywed stage, that's tough, right? Because we should already have this down. The problem with it is, and again, a lot of us aren't even mature at the newlywed stage to be able to do this, but there are classes, there are books, like the Becoming One podcast that we do is a great way to learn about it, or the Becoming One coaching program and our coaching calls, where we teach you how to get into the skills of actually talking through our most important marital stuff. But it's about conflict. It's about understanding our patterns. It's about recognizing that there's always going to be smoke, which is your friends or your family, and there's going to be a fire, which is the starved stuff, right? The safety, the trust, the appreciation, the respect, the validation, the encouragement, the dedication. There's always the deeper issue. So we've got to get good at talking not in the smoke, not just fighting about friends, and getting down to the real starved stuff. We've also got to get really good at this stage about learning that we've got to not only just be together, we've also got to be okay being independent of each other. We really want to make sure in this newlywed stage that both of us are growing independent as well as interdependent. That each of us is solid socially, emotionally, spiritually, financially. That each of us is able to be an independent while we're still together, working really hard to be interdependent. That's the stuff we have to talk about, and the character has to start growing here. Don't just pretend like this is about keeping friends or family. It's not. It's about learning to be together in an independent way and use the skills of character and communication and cooperation and change and talking about what really matters most and pushing your way through that stage. I promise the power comes when you have the ability to talk through the hard stuff and have the character to actually sometimes don't go with your friends and stay with your partner. And sometimes have the character to let them go with their friends and know that you'll get time with them in the morning or the afternoon or some other time. But we've got to start communicating through it. So that's the newlywed stage, which is, if you notice, it's very different from the dating stage, that high yearning stage. Now, it gets even weirder as we now start to enter into the next stage, which is where kids start to come. And hang on to your hat, guys. The minute kids start to enter the relationship, generally the research historically shows that marital satisfaction is going up the entire time we're in these first two stages because we're so together, we're learning, we're connecting, all this stuff. Marital satisfaction's growing. But the minute we start to have kids, the marital satisfaction starts to go down and something new is born. What's born when you have children is family. Now family satisfaction is going up and marriage satisfaction is going down. And they pass like two ships in the night if you're not careful, because we end up spending more time in kind of the co-parenting stages of our marriage, where one of you might be more fixated on the kids, the other might be more fixated on work. You're both fixated on work, you're both struggling with the kids, that the marriage might suffer a little bit, right? So the only way to get through the co-parenting stage is to fix the number one problem. And the number one problem for marriage in the co-parenting stage is you don't have time or energy to really be together in a healthy way. If you don't have the time and you don't have the energy to be together, then what are you? Then the relationship is going to suffer. So the problem is we don't have time, so you got to find time. You got to find space. You got to find energy. You got to find attention and bandwidth to dedicate to the marriage. My big belief with our couples and our relationships is people aren't falling out of love. I don't believe you fall out of love with people. I just don't. I think they actually are just falling into something else. They're falling into TikTok. They're falling into other social media distractions. They're falling into their work. They're falling into all of these different things. And so as you think about your relationship, do you have the time? Do you have the energy? I see a really high, in fact, significant amount of couples in this stage, usually 2 or 3 children deep into their relationship, that start to fade. In fact, some of the marriage research shows that at about the 7-year mark of the marriage is one of the highest, most volatile likely times that a person would divorce, right? Other than like the first year. But that 7th year is now where we're kind of through the dating stage. We're through the newlywed stage. We've had a kid, maybe 2, and now we're starting to really starve in our co-parenting. And so if you want to get through this stage, you're going to have to get way serious about your time management, about your prioritization, and you're going to have to start understanding that it's not a marriage anymore that you've created. Now you have two institutions in play. You now have your marriage institution and you have your family. And they're 2 things that are different. And sometimes we merge those together and we think our family is our marriage, and it's not. And you need to kind of know that now, because later when all the kids leave, you're going to find it out there too. It's just not. So this is super important at this stage to really sincerely now know that if you want a healthy family, we've got to dedicate time, energy, attention, and resource to the family. If you want a healthy marriage, you've also got to keep dedicating time, energy, resource, and attention to that marriage. And the way to do that is very simply this advice, okay? 25 years doing this. This is the best advice I've found to fix this, which is re-energize and connect the relationship, the marriage, with loving rituals. We are going to create rituals which are just connected, loving habits, and we're going to use the rituals to actually make sure that we are putting in priority, in time, in space, in resource, and in energy into our marriage as we are simultaneously building the family. And the way we do it is a ritual. Now, a ritual is a connected, meaningful, habitual way that we are going to actually retouch, reconnect, re-strengthen, and re-energize our relationship. And the way I kind of break it down is I want you to break it into different kinds of rituals. I want you to have 2 to 3 daily rituals, okay? I want you to have a weekly ritual. I want you to have a monthly ritual. And I want you to have some 2 to 3 annual rituals, okay? And we'll go through each one of them. But a daily ritual would be something like a 20-minute uninterrupted couple time, where once you get the kids to bed, we turn off the TVs, we turn off all of our social media, we turn everything off, and we sit and we talk for like 20 minutes. The ritual could be something as simple as cuddling while you're watching a show together. It could be a kiss hello and a kiss goodbye. That could be a ritual you could have. Every time you come into the home, we kiss hello and hug. We kiss goodbye when we leave. That's 2 rituals a day. The research shows having consistent daily rituals, and you can have 3 to 5, 7 daily rituals a day that are meaningful to both of you. They actually reconnect you as you go through the day. I think a really important daily ritual would be the touch. I think cuddling with each other, being near each other with a couple of other rules, because sometimes we've created other habits when it comes to cuddle. The cuddle time, I want it to be something where we can reconnect, but the rules are very simple about cuddling. No groping, okay, ladies? We're not a piece of meat. No groping and no griping. Don't just bring up negative talk. Don't try to fix your problems while you're cuddling. You don't want the cuddle to become a sign of negative relationship. You also don't want the cuddling to mean, obviously, we're going to have sex now. If the only time we cuddle is to have sex, then guess what? You're probably going to get less cuddle. And I'd love you to instead know that we're going to cuddle and it can go to other places. It just doesn't always have to. And for weekly, that could be date nights, one time a week, no kids. We're not going to drag the kids along on our date night and call it a date night. You can just go on a walk and talk. You can get a babysitter and actually go out and have a really big event, or you can stay in, put the kids to bed, watch a show, order dinner, and have your own in-house date night. But do it weekly so you're connecting consistently. And I'd love you to make a monthly ritual, which might be a bigger event. It might be something that you can't always afford to do every week, but we do it once a month. And the cool thing about the monthly activity is you can go and rekindle activities that you used to do when you were dating. Go back to those plays you used to love. Go back and listen to the music at that one bar you used to go to. Go hang out and do the things that used to make you feel the love in the first place. And then also, you can do annual rituals, and the annual rituals could be going away for your anniversary, going away for each other's birthdays, and celebrating the bigger events of your life. The activity, very simply then, get your daily rituals, 3 to 5, get a weekly ritual, 1 or 2 of those a week, monthly rituals, 1 or 2 of those, and annual yearly rituals, 2 to 3 of those a year. And when you consistently put in the rituals, guess what happens? You re-energize, you create new resource, time, focus, attention together, and boom, you can make it through those more difficult stages where the kids are coming. This is just going to get us through this co-parenting stage, but the daily rituals are going to help you through every stage that we go through, as is everything else that we've been talking about, right? Now, we got to get to the next stage. The next stage is the empty nester stage. And this is a real wake-up moment for a lot of people that got lost in the co-parenting stage. Now, all of a sudden, when those crazy little minions of yours, those little kids you've dedicated all of your time and attention to, when they finally fly the coop, you then are left with each other. And family satisfaction kind of drops off, and marriage satisfaction is usually already low. So we're going to try to pick up the marriage satisfaction by dedicating time and attention to it. The number one thing that we have to overcome in this stage, the biggest problem we're facing, is being together when we haven't been for years. Getting back in the habit of loving each other when we haven't given each other the time, the attention, and the focus. This is what I am going through right now, as pretty much we've empty nested. And now my wife and I get home. We only have to make dinner for us. We only have to make the food we like. We have nothing but time to talk and connect, but it's real. And there is an emptiness for kind of both of us, because we've spent so much time dedicating it to the kids. And some of us have even wrapped our identities around our children so much that we don't even know who we are anymore. So we're going to overcome this lack of time that we've spent together by simply doing this advice. We are going to go back to what we did when we originally were falling in love, and we're going to reconnect using 4 seasons and hundreds of questions. We're going to go back and give it 1 year. So let's take a year, and this is the overarching activity. Take the next year when you're empty nesting and dedicate it to refinding, re-energizing, and reconnecting to your partner, just like you did when you were dating. We're going to go deeper and we're going to go wider. Go start doing some activities together. Go start figuring out new things we can do season by season. What happens when the snow starts to fall or the winter gets so cold you can't go out and do your typical walk routine? What will you guys go do together then? And start finding new things that we can do. And a great way to do that, again, is go back to what used to work when you were dating. Go deep again into the questions and start relearning about who your partner is today. Remember, from the first time we did this as a newlywed to when we're doing it now, it may be 30 years. They're going to be different people. Some of the answers are going to change, right? A great way to do this again is go back, and all you got to do is Google questions I can ask my partner to strengthen my relationship. You ask a simple question like that on Google, and you will find thousands of questions. You can go to Amazon or other online stores, and you can actually start looking for questions that you can ask to strengthen a marriage. You can go get icebreaker kind of questions, questions that help you be vulnerable. The goal here would be to start to re-identify who we are and what we want for the next 30 years, right? Start talking about issues and questions about what you want to be as a couple, right? And what are your successes? And what are the things that you feel like you've done well as a couple? Don't just spend every conversation in the empty nesting stage talking about the kids that are gone and talking about their lives. Also make sure you're sharpening your life, and you can start to identify generally how you want to approach your children, what you want to be like for them, what support you can offer them. But make sure that you're not just falling back to parent mode, and instead we're going to get through the empty nester stage by actually giving each other the attention we need there, right? So the problem is we haven't been together for years very intentionally, and because we haven't been together, we've drifted apart. Now during the empty nester stage, we've got to drift back together intentionally using the 4 seasons and hundreds of questions. Take a year. That's the goal. 1 year to refine your relationship. Up your game, try more things, take dance classes, do exciting activities, do a little more risky stuff than you maybe were when you were a parent. You know what I mean? Maybe go do the zip line, go do some things that are exciting, and that energy and excitement for the next year of focusing on your relationship will usually help you find it. So now as we wrap it up, we get to this final stage, the golden years is what I call them. That's right. That's that stage where you've kind of moved on from empty nesting. You're now kind of fading off into the sunset kind of idea. And the biggest test that we all fight there, that problem that we run into, is we start to wonder what we're good for anymore. We feel like we've kind of run out of time, run out of everything. We start to maybe feel some guilt. I wish I had done more, wish I had been more. Maybe the kids aren't calling us. We don't seem as valued and as necessary and as needed. Super normal that we do there. A lot of times we might fall into loneliness, and we've got to combat that loneliness. And the number one way we're going to combat it is one of my favorite things to start to figure out, and I'm going to challenge all of you to start doing it, is we want to figure out the legacy we want to have. So I want you to start working on, in your relationship, what legacy do you want to hand down? I call it an heirloom marriage. What do you want your kids to see about marriage, and you want to hand it down like that's their inheritance? And this is where you start to figure out, how are you going to serve the world? How are you going to serve your family and your kids? How are you going to take care of each other? How are you going to show and model healthy living? How are you going to show and model a healthy service to one another when one of us gets sick? This is an heirloom, or something that people can inherit. And the power of your kids being able to see your marriage that started in this really yearning, exciting stage, and having worked through all these stages, you now get to this awesome stage of a healthy, loving, enduring marriage. What do you want that to look like? What are the gifts you want your kids to remember about you? What are the things that matter most that you want them to remember? And then let's start servicing those ideas. Let's start creating the energy and the focus around those things so that your kids can see how important those things were. You can turn together also and model the benefits of everything you've learned through every one of your stages of a relationship. How powerful would it be if you could show your children how to effectively communicate through conflict, how to effectively build a purpose together, how to share your goals, how to share dreams, how to just be comfortable sitting. One of my favorite people ever was a guy named Ralph Smith, who was a neighbor that we used to visit a lot, lived to 100 years old. And I remember when we would go visit him with our family, we'd walk in and Ralph would be sitting on the couch at 98 with his wife, Barbara, and they would not even have the TV on. They'd just be sitting on the couch holding hands. Barbara was hard of hearing, and they just loved each other. But what they handed me is this idea of what an heirloom marriage looks like. It's the idea that we look after each other, we care for each other, we talk through things. What is it you want to hand down? And let's spend the golden years creating a clear vision of what that is and making sure we're living and loving that relationship so our kids get to see it. That's the most important thing that would give you purpose, passion, power, and strength during those golden years. You don't just have to sit back and watch it all happen. You can start to get back in your life and offer whatever you're capable of offering. That's the goal, right? Remember, each of these stages are important. And if we could start it young, that would be great, and then fulfill each stage. And we can. And if you didn't, then just start with the stage that you're in. Whichever stage you're in, start combating the challenge and the problem and crush it with the advice that we've been talking about. That's how you become one over time and in stage by just giving the right attention and focus to the solutions that we know work. So until next time, thanks you guys. Take care and go work hard on becoming one.